She was beautiful in a way that made cameras nervous. Every light bent toward her face like a confession. Barbara Payton, once the promise of 1950s Hollywood glamour, became its darkest cautionary tale. She had everything the studios could sell: beauty, confidence, danger. But the same town that crowned her queen of desire would later leave her begging on Sunset Boulevard. How does a woman go from red carpets to police reports in less than a decade? The answer lies in the lies Hollywood told about her, and the ones she told herself. She was born Barbara Lee Redfield on November 16, 1927, in Cloquet, Minnesota, the daughter of a salesman and a fiercely ambitious mother. Her childhood was a storm of contradictions, strict discipline wrapped in restless dreams. The family moved to Odessa, Texas when she was still a girl, and by high school Barbara was already local royalty. She had movie star looks and a taste for risk. She married her high school sweetheart at 16, divorced soon after, and followed a new obsession: Hollywood. In the late 1940s, Los Angeles was a factory of fantasies. The war was over, optimism was currency, and studios were searching for the next Lana Turner. Barbara arrived with no connections but an unshakable belief that she belonged on a screen. She modeled, danced, and learned how to charm producers without appearing desperate. "I knew how to make men feel lucky," she later wrote. Universal International signed her in 1949, promising stardom. It seemed inevitable until the machinery turned her into something she couldn't sustain. Her breakout came in Trapped 1949 opposite Lloyd Bridges, a gritty noir that showcased her as the kind of woman men couldn't resist and women couldn't trust. Critics called her a blonde menace with soul. The studio saw dollar signs, but even then the headlines focused more on her social life than her craft. She was photographed at nightclubs with A-list escorts, her name whispered alongside Howard Hughes and Bob Hope. In reality, Barbara was still learning how to survive among predators disguised as producers. She signed a contract with Warner Brothers in 1950 and seemed poised for a major career. Jack Warner compared her to Jean Harlow. Her starring role in Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye 1950 opposite James Cagney was electric raw, unpolished, and dangerous. Cagney reportedly said, "She's got the instincts, you can't teach that." But the film's title would soon echo her life. Hollywood rewarded submission, not defiance. And Barbara was already showing too much will of her own. She wanted to choose her roles, her lovers, her image. The studio wanted obedience. When she refused a publicity arrangement, dinner dates with a powerful columnist, Warner Brothers dropped her. Overnight, the starlet became a freelancer. For many actresses, that was freedom. For Barbara, it was exile. She started working in low-budget noirs and crime dramas where her natural sensuality felt less staged but more dangerous. Then came the love triangle that destroyed everything. In 1950, she met actor Franco Tone, a refined leading man twice her age, and Tom Neal, a handsome but volatile ex-boxer known for detour. Both fell in love with her, and she with both of them. The tabloids turned it into a gladiatorial match. In September 1951, the two men confronted each other at Barbara's home. Neal attacked Tone with brutal force, breaking his nose and fracturing his skull. Newspapers splashed the story across front pages: Hollywood love brawl. Barbara, stunned and loyal to no one, visited Tone in the hospital and announced their engagement days later. She married him as soon as he could stand. The press devoured it. Photographers crowded their wedding, cameras clicking as if recording a crime scene. Within weeks, she left him and returned to Tom Neal. That single decision marked the end of her career. Warner Brothers blacklisted her. Advertisers dropped her. America's post-war morality couldn't forgive a woman who appeared faithless, violent adjacent, and unapologetic. Neal's reputation as a brute only worsened her image. They moved in together, living off bar gigs and small roles. By 1953, she was in B-movies like Run for the Hills and Bad Blonde. The glamour was gone. The survival instinct remained. "I wasn't acting anymore," she later said. "I was just fighting." Alcohol became her escape. So did fleeting fame. She began appearing at Hollywood parties uninvited, slurring jokes about herself before gossip columnists could. In an era before rehab culture, alcoholism was treated as moral failure, not illness. Directors stopped calling. Her last major film, Murder Is My Beat 1955, went almost unnoticed. The spiral quickened. She and Tom Neal split amid violence and mutual ruin. By the late 1950s, she was living in cheap apartments, sometimes arrested for drunkenness or bad checks. The woman once courted by moguls was now a tabloid footnote. The cruelty of it wasn't just the fall, it was the laughter that followed. In 1963, she tried to reclaim control by writing her autobiography, I Am Not Ashamed. The title was Defiance, disguised as confession. The book was raw, self-destructive, and painfully honest. She admitted to hustling, to drinking, to loving men who destroyed her. Critics called it trashy. Today it reads like early feminist rage. But instead of rehabilitation, it brought mockery. She was photographed selling her own book on Sunset Boulevard for $1 apiece. Friends described her in those years as still magnetic, still quick-witted, still hoping. She once told a reporter, "People think I'm crazy, but I just wanted to live in Technicolor." By then, she was living in a dingy Hollywood apartment, drinking rot-gut whiskey, sometimes prostituting herself to survive. Police reports from the mid-60s record arrests for disorderly conduct and solicitation. Each mugshot looked like a ghost of the last. What no one saw was the systemic cruelty behind her collapse. The industry that exploited her sexuality now shunned her for owning it. Studio contracts had once demanded she smile for photographers. Now they printed her shame for headlines. Barbara Payton became the warning whispered to young actresses. Don't be like her. But she was also the mirror reflecting what Hollywood did to women who refused to stay quiet. By the early 1960s, Tom Neal was also ruined, blacklisted, living in obscurity. Their fates remained intertwined. In 1965, he shot and killed his third wife and went to prison for manslaughter. The press revived Barbara's name only to remind readers of the scandal. She wrote bitterly, "They can't let me die in peace." Her health deteriorated rapidly. Years of alcoholism and poverty left her with liver failure and heart disease. She moved back to her parents' small home in San Diego, cared for by the same mother who once chased fame for her. "You were right, Mama," she reportedly said near the end. "Hollywood did make me famous, but not the way we dreamed." She died on May 8, 1967, at only 39. The coroner listed liver and heart failure due to chronic alcoholism. Her death barely made national news. No glamorous funeral, no studio tribute, just a small service attended by family and a few forgotten friends. The newspapers that once photographed her diamonds now printed her police records. But something strange happened in the decades that followed. Fascination returned. Film historians began re-examining her story as more than scandal. Feminist scholars called her the first casualty of Hollywood's double standard. They noted how male stars survived affairs and fights, while Barbara was erased for the same. In the 1990s, her memoir was rediscovered by collectors. Its brutal candor read like an early blueprint for celebrity self-exposure. She wrote before it was safe to tell the truth, one critic said. Recent documentaries and biographies, including John O'Dowd's Kiss Tomorrow. Goodbye, the Barbara Payton story, reframed her as a woman undone by structural hypocrisy. O'Dowd's interviews with surviving acquaintances painted her as kind, funny, and heartbreakingly naive, a woman who believed love could protect her from power. It never did. If you trace her trajectory cloquet to sunset, stardom to Skid Row, you see a pattern still recognizable today. A culture that manufactures female desire and then punishes women for it. Barbara's ruin wasn't self-inflicted alone. It was socially engineered. Studios commodified her sexuality. Gossip columns commodified her collapse. And audiences consumed both as entertainment. She became both icon and caution, saint and sinner, forever misread. And yet, in every surviving frame of her films, you can see flashes of what might have been. The intelligence in her eyes. The sharp humor behind her smile. The defiance that no director could tame. Watch Kiss Tomorrow. Goodbye again the moment when she looks at Cagney, eyes blazing, voice trembling not with fear, but with knowledge. She wasn't just acting. She was predicting her own ending. Her story resonates now because it feels unfinished. We live in an era that claims to celebrate women's autonomy. Yet the machinery of fame still grinds the same way, adoration turning to outrage. Control disguised as care. Barbara Payton's downfall is both history and prophecy. In 2015, a small Los Angeles exhibit dedicated to forgotten Hollywood women displayed one of her original Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye posters beside her 1960s mugshot. Two images, same woman. One smiling in a satin gown, the other staring at the camera, weary and unafraid. The curator called it the Hollywood diptych. For many visitors, Barbara's face lingered longest. A year later, her hometown of Cloquet quietly added her name to a notable citizens list in a local museum, a belated nod to the girl who once dreamed of grace under those northern skies. An old classmate donated her high school photo, noting, "She was too beautiful for this world." It was a small act of kindness, decades overdue, but it meant that at last, someone was looking at her again with compassion instead of judgment. And in that quiet redemption lies something Hollywood rarely grants: perspective. Barbara Payton's life is not simply a tragedy. It's a case study in how brilliance without protection turns fatal under the studio spotlight. Every generation rediscovers her, not for the scandal, but for the warning that no amount of beauty or talent can outlast a system built to break the women it adores. In the streaming age, her films have found new viewers. Restored prints of Trapped in Kiss, Tomorrow Goodbye circulate on classic channels and film festivals, introducing her to audiences who see what her peers once ignored. A performer of raw intelligence, unguarded, modern before her time. Younger actresses cite her as an early rebel, a woman who refused to smile through exploitation. Her legend, once tabloid fodder, is now being rewritten by those who recognize her not as a failure, but as a pioneer crushed beneath the myth of perfection. She once said, "Maybe someday they'll understand that I was never the bad girl. I was just the girl they made bad." That line, buried in a forgotten interview, might be her truest performance. When you strip away the gossip and the tragedy, what remains is a woman who wanted to live on her own terms in a system that punished women for even trying. Her rise was cinematic, her fall Shakespearean, but her endurance, her refusal to vanish entirely, is quietly revolutionary. Half a century later, her ghost still walks Sunset Boulevard, not as a warning, but as a reminder that the glamour they sell is always rented, and the bill always comes due. If stories like this speak to you, stay with us, because behind every dazzling marquee, there's someone like Barbara shining too hard, loving too deeply, and paying the price for wanting to be free.